Let me start with a rule every nurse learns on their very first night shift, that if a patient knows your name before you introduce yourself, then something is very wrong. And I learned that rule too late, because my name is Daniel Moore, and I was just a night shift nurse at Lincoln Memorial Hospital. And one patient made me quit medicine forever. The night shift officially began at 11 p.m., but unofficially, that was when the hospital stopped pretending everything was under control. Lincoln Memorial was an old hospital. Brick walls, narrow hallways, elevators that made sounds elevators should not make. During the day, it looked peaceful, but at night, it felt awake. At exactly 2:12 a.m., my pager vibrated, admitting patient room 306 ER transfer. And that alone was strange, because room 306 had been empty for weeks. Nurses avoided it without ever saying why. When the patient arrived on a gurney pushed by 2 ER staff members, they would not meet my eyes. The man was in his early 40s, pale, with no visible injuries, no ID bracelet, and no chart, which never happens. When I asked where his file was, one of the techs muttered that it did not come with one, and when I asked his name, no one answered, and they left immediately, which should have been my second warning. I stepped closer to adjust the monitors. His breathing was slow and controlled, and his heart rate was normal. And when I leaned in to attach the pulse oximeter, he opened his eyes and said my name, Daniel. And my body froze because I had not told him my name. And when I said I did not catch that, he smiled and said, I never do. And when I asked how he knew my name, he calmly told me that I was the one who double-checked locks before leaving the ward and that careful people live longer, which did not feel comforting at all. I tried to laugh it off, thinking patients say strange things when sedated, and when I asked his name, he said I could call him Patient X. And when I said that was not funny, he replied that he was not joking. At 2:46 a.m., the heart monitor spiked without warning, and 1 second everything was normal, and the next second chaos. And when I rushed back inside, the patient began convulsing and then suddenly flatlined, and I hit the code button and shouted for him to stay with me. And after a moment of silence, his eyes snapped open, and he grabbed my wrist hard and told me not to call them. And when I asked who, he said, they come when I die. And that was when I realized the code alarm had never gone off, and no footsteps were coming, and the call had not gone through, and the patient sat up, breathing normally, without a defibrillator or medication, just back again. And when I whispered that he had died, he nodded and said, briefly. And when I told him that was not possible, he replied that it was here, and that was why this hospital had been chosen. And before I could understand what he meant, 2 men arrived who were not hospital security, wearing unfamiliar uniforms with no name tags. And one of them looked at the patient and said that he was not scheduled to wake. And the patient smiled and said, they never schedule that part. And when the guards reached for their radios, every monitor shut off, the lights flickered, and the hallway fell into darkness, and I heard a scream followed by silence. And then the patient stood up with no IV lines or wires, walking like someone who remembered how to die. And he said my name again and told me this was where I leave, this job, this building, this life. And I ran down the hall, past empty nurses' stations, past rooms that should have had patients. And when the elevator would not come, I heard footsteps behind me, slow and unhurried, like they knew I could not escape. And when I reached the stairwell, I saw words written in red marker on the wall saying, Room 306 does not reset properly. And I did not wait to understand, I just ran. And I never went back. I quit without notice, and the hospital later sent me one email saying I was never assigned to room 306, and I deleted it. 3 months later, I saw his face on the news, a body found outside a closed medical facility with no identity and an undetermined cause of death. And in the photo, his eyes were open, smiling. And last night at 2:12 a.m., my phone vibrated with an unknown number and one message saying, "Admit patient room 306." And I changed my number today. But if you work nights in a hospital and a patient knows your name before you introduce yourself, do not ask questions. Just leave.